Oh, fuck. What was his name? Now I'm drawing a blank. He was a keyboard player for a group called Charisma. And if you watch the Yacht Rock documentary, it's their song that they play at the very end, which is pretty much all the Toto guys and like a couple more people. So I don't know how
Wow.
into the genre and like musicians.
That's a yacht rock supergroup.
Yeah,
right there.
yeah. And he was telling me about when they were recording that record, Patrice Rushen was down the hall recording Forget Me Nots, and they were like going back and forth and listening to everybody's shit. And remember, Toto at the same time was recording Thriller.
Wow. This is a real deep cut for our yacht rock fans, of which there must be.
I'm not sure if is it a coherent category? I've always kind of dismissed it as because it's like a stylistic thing rather than about the actual music.
But for some reason, Italian yacht rock is a genre. It's a very small genre, but it's just.
But it
just makes it.
Would you say
makes
it's more Italia disco?
I think it's.
Yeah, that's a different, musically entirely different thing, right?
And also like geographically, that's on the land. You listen. It's the same people listening to
Italo disco is land-based music.
Yeah,
I fell down an Italia disco rabbit hole, and it caused me to rethink how I looked at authenticity when I found out about Den Haro and the whole Den Haro story.
Den Haro? No,
you're not familiar with Den Haro?
No.
Oh, bro, ham.
So tell us about.
There's this American dude that goes to Europe, wants to make it big in music, and he writes these really horrible pop songs, but they hit out there, right? There's something about that sound that hits, and he doesn't cross over as well as the record label would have liked him to. So they go, we need a prettier guy that looks more now, quote unquote. And they go to the clubs and they find this kid dancing. He's got the eye makeup on. He's got the look. And they go, we're going to name you Den Haro for dinero. And you're going to mime the songs and this guy's going to sing and record them. And everybody was fine with it. And he writes this song called Future Brain. It's a massive hit. He's bigger than Michael Jackson, right? And the American that's writing the songs goes, but I write songs and I actually sing them, i.e. this guy. And I think I can do it too. They're like, nah, not really. The songs you wrote, we're going to give everything to this dude. So he says, F it. He goes back to the States, becomes a photographer, a very successful photographer, and makes this music on the side. 20 plus years later, he decides he wants to come out on social media and say, if you've been a fan of Den Haro, all his big hits I wrote and sang. Wow. And I'll prove it. And here's the guy that me and him recorded the music together, this Italian man, and bust the guy out. And then there becomes this debate between the fans of the mime, who he has a bigger percentage of the fans, and the small group of fans of the guy whose name is Tom Hooker. And there's a documentary about it. It's called The Last Dons of Disco. And it's fascinating to me because Milli Vanilli fits into the same category. I think both of you guys are old enough to remember Milli Vanilli. Now, they released music after the fact, and the producer, Frank Farian, released music with the quote-unquote real singers after the fact, also interjecting a fake singer in there. But nobody cared. And there's something to be said about the entire package. And the Italian disco documentary ends with the mime playing a club, a pretty big club in Germany, with grown men crying, singing along to someone lip syncing.
Amazing. Well, I don't know if this is relevant or not. I often had this feeling about Lana Del Rey, of whom I'm a big fan, that I wasn't really sure if she was her. Of course, it's a pseudonym. That's not a problem. But to what extent has she been manufactured, kind of built up by the music industry? It's unclear. And actually, I've never read up enough about her biography to find out. And actually, because I just don't care, really, because I decided I like Lana Del Rey. I like her music as a studio artist. I really like it. And I don't really care if it's Lizzie Grant and who Lizzie Grant was and Lana Del Rey is and so on. Anyway, so I was like just going on this pretense that, yes, it's manufactured, but I like the manufacturer. I like the commodity that comes out of it, right? I saw her live, was it 2 years ago here in Sao Paulo? And she was so bad. It was so disappointing. And then someone told me, no, she said it, I think in an interview, something like that she just hates performing live. right? It's just not her. And it's like, okay, that actually makes sense. She just doesn't seem to enjoy it at all. She seems quite timid, actually. So it doesn't own the stage at all in a way that you'd think, listening to her, that she completely would. Anyway.
Well, it's legitimate to be a studio performer. Steely Dan, for example, you can get in the best musicians, make the best sound, and then fire them as soon as they finish / play a wrong note. And so you make good albums, but not the same thing as performing.
Yeah, but anyway, it that led me to a kind of to see Lana Del Rey just as an example, as someone who it's kind of two things which seemingly point in opposite directions, right? Because normally the fake manufactured person is like a stage presence, but actually is not a studio presence. She might be like fake manufactured, but she's actually a studio presence, but not on the stage, really. And it's kind of, that's a weird,
which is weird because generally, as someone that's spent over I don't know, 15, 20, I don't know, a lot of years playing live music in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, in various parts of the world. I loved playing live way more than I liked recording, but now I really enjoyed the recording process, and I don't really have it in me to go through the rigors of playing live consistently. I'd like to do it one last time with my buddies and have an Ozzy Osbourne-esque send-off with the three other guys that I played music with. But I think the Steely Dan analogy is kind of interesting because those are guys that took the entire budget and made a record, to the point where their songs on Gaucho, their fourth or fifth record, with like 3 different drummers on one song. That's insane. But that's the level they wanted to put into it. Now, is Lana Del Rey the same person where she's in the studio and she's like, no, the pitch was awful on that note? Like, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah. But also, again, this is one of the things. I won't look into it. I'm happy this to be an area in which I'm not curious about. Like, I'm happy to just enjoy what's
authenticity.
There,
do you really want it? I mean, if you might think you do, but if you dig too much, you might find it doesn't exist.
I don't think it does. I don't think, I'm with you, George. I don't think it does. I think I agree with Alex. You dig what you dig, and that's just what it is. If Lana Del Rey doesn't want to play live, she doesn't want to play live. I was listening to I can't think of his name right now, the dude from Steely Dan that made a solo record, The Nightfly. I can't think of his name right now. I don't know why I'm putting it on a blank. But anyway, when he does that live, he doesn't sing. Sometimes he has other singers come in and sing. And the best version of IGY from The Nightfly is with Patty Austin singing it, with him playing piano. And that's what I dig about live. If there's a better person than me singing my stuff, do it. I wrote the guitar parts, I played them, so I'll be more than happy to sit in the background if you're killing it better than me.
Yeah, I'm not the same as that. If there's somebody who's better than me at podcasting as me on this podcast, I don't want to know them. I don't want them to replace me. I would
be interested in being put in touch with them, actually.
Yeah. This is the problem. You don't want to know if you're not the best version of yourself. If there's another one out there, that would be
there's no one better than you, George. It has to work with you guys. Can I just say, and I'm not saying this to kiss your guys' ass, I do enjoy the stuff you guys do. I get super excited when you guys make the clips on Instagram. I think this is one of the smartest shows out there, and I'm always giddy, nervous, and excited whenever I get to come on here or talk to one of you guys.
Oh, that's very nice of you to say. Although, if you really wanted to flatter us, you could answer the question that we were debating before you came on.
Go for it.
Which is something that George was saying. What band are you as a podcaster? Which is terrible and lame. And George seemed to be saying that Phil was the Strokes and Lee Jones is Coldplay, which is harsh on Lee. And not representative of, anyway, I'm not sure where George was going with this. Actually,
this was more of a behind the scenes conversation.
All right, I've opened the kimono here.
Yeah, and I said that Alex was Fleetwood Mac and I was Captain Beefheart or Velvet Underground. I mean, this conversation doesn't make any sense at all.
George.
But yeah,
well, my entire show is Faith No More. You never know what you're going to get. It's a lot of different things, unpredictable.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'd want to be Nick Cave, the Nick Cave of podcasting, but just a bit chaos, bit of soulfulness. I don't know.
Birthday party, Nick Cave.
Yeah, well, no, but first, well, let's say albums 3 to 7, Nick Cave, which is, but this is just, I'm not going to do this now.
This is why people get mad when you bring me on the show. They're like, we wanted to hear smart talk, and these guys are talking about yacht rock and Nick Cave.
Wait, we should then maybe get officially started.
Milan ou Tripoli, Vilnius ou Benghazi, Paris, Moscou, on fait le Bunga, Bunga, Bangkok ou Bogota, Le Caire ou Jakarta, Gustavia, on fait le Bunga, Bunga, Stockholm ou Monaco, ou Montevideo, Oslo, Tokyo, on fait le Bunga, Bunga.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to BungaCast, the global politics podcast at the end of history. Today, we get jacked. We were talking about authenticity there in something that I assume will be a cold open. And that is a theme that's running through this, but also about the male gaze, about physicality, physioculture, if you want to call it that way, maybe something on sports. We might turn to that towards the end. We are very happy to welcome back on the podcast Jason Myles of This Is Revolution podcast and many other great things that he does. Hello.
Hey guys, and thank you very much for having me. I was super stoked when you asked me to talk about the steroid piece, which is one of the few things that I've written where I actually went to go interview people about their steroid use.
We're going to find out about this. Yeah. We're going to find out about this in just a second. The other voice you've heard, obviously, is George Hoare in London. Hello.
Obviously George, yeah.
Obviously, at Obviously George, which isn't your real handle, but...
There probably isn't Obviously George, who's now going to get...
lots of follows off the back.
0.1% increase in Arted. Yeah. Anyway.
And I'm Alex Hochuli in São Paulo, Brazil, at Alex _1789. If you get, which actually is my handle. Anyway, so this is an episode in association with Damage Magazine, our friends over at Damage. Subscribers to this podcast on Patreon get a free online digital subscription to Damage as well. So you should sign up to us and also get the print magazine, which George is holding up if you're watching on video. The new issue on responsibility is out, the 4th print issue. But today we're talking about a slightly different matter, which is, as Jason's already said, steroid use. And that might seem a little bit tangential maybe to some of our interests, but I think this is what you're going to hear about the article will, I'm sure, convince you that it's very kind of, rather central to a lot of the things that we talk about. So I guess to get started, what are we actually talking about, Jason? What is a PED?
Sure.
I think people know performance enhancing drugs, but I came across this abbreviation or even acronym, depending on how you pronounce it. IPED.
Yeah.
What is that?
That blew my mind. Image and performance enhancing drugs are on the rise amongst young people. And the conversation for me and steroids started with a good friend of mine and journalist, Bertrand Cooper. And he is a fitness freak and used to be a trainer while he was going through getting his master's in college, and lives with a professional bodybuilder who also is a childhood friend in Los Angeles. And we had got into this conversation about how young people see themselves through the lens of the internet. And Bert and I have these conversations for days and days and days. And then I wanted to write something about it. And Ben Fong was on the show, who's an editor at Damage. And he wrote a book about drugs. And I had mentioned steroids, and he was like, it's not really a big deal. And I was like, it's a bigger deal than you think. And we had this conversation, and our conversation kept going and going. And then finally he said, hey, write this thing. And I reached out to some friends I knew that actually were professional bodybuilders and did steroids. And of course, Sean Fury is quoted in the piece, who is Bert's roommate and professional bodybuilder, who's really taking the natural thing really far. But what was fascinating to me was why, right? Because we know the damages of steroids. And most of us, especially if you're around our age, you look at it as quote unquote cheating. And after the big steroid scandal in the 90s, I don't think people look at it the same way, because bodybuilding is all about image. But what got me interested wasn't bodybuilders. It was regular people that were 13, 14 years old that were taking very powerful steroids like trenbolone and risking stunting their growth, insane acne, testicular shrinkage, losing the ability to produce your own testosterone, just to bench press 135 pounds.
Is that a lot? I have to think about what that is in kilos. That's not a lot at all. No, that's like 60 kilos or something.
That's
50 kilos.
Plates,
yeah, that's
right?
very
That's
little.
2 plates.
Yeah. That's
side.
yeah.
But these are kids that are 13, 14 years old. They can't get it up because that didn't sound right. They can't lift it up because they're too young and small and not strong enough. But you're going to get those muscles. There's a process you take to get there. It's not that big of a deal, but no one wants to wait. And you don't have to anymore.
I mean, it's a good point also about bodybuilders, because when, bodybuilding, it's a little bit silly, I think. I think everybody would kind of go, everybody, it shouldn't make those claims, but I think it's commonly seen as something which is a little bit silly, because you're not necessarily strong, right? It doesn't make you a good fighter or actually very strong and being able to lift or carry or push stuff or pull stuff. It's just aesthetics, and it's kind of this very preening, the oil, the kind of brown kind of oil that they wear, the little speed. It's like the more you talk about it, the more you're like, look, I can't even try to do this justice. It's like, it's a bit silly, right? And so performance enhancing drugs, or image and performance enhancing drugs used by people who are bodybuilders, you're like, well, yeah, but I guess that's part and parcel of the thing. And as someone who defends performance enhancing drugs in sports, in professional sports, I wouldn't be able to draw the line at, image enhancing drugs for bodybuilders, right? Because insofar as competition, I think, do the best that you can. It would be artificial to draw a line between certain forms of technology, medical enhancement, and ones which are ruled out. The World Anti-Doping Association rules out these things, but allows these other things. And it's not really, I think the line is often quite arbitrary. So anyway,
there is no line in bodybuilding, right? In professional bodybuilding, they don't drug test. So most professional bodybuilders are steroid users.
Yeah. And the thing even about strength is interesting, because there's this video which maybe went viral elsewhere beyond Brazil. Generally, Brazil's big enough that it creates enough of an audience that these things kind of spill over, even if they're in Portuguese, of laborers, right? I can't remember the word in English. Pedreiros, like builders, basically.
Day laborers.
Right? Yeah. Like, who look reasonably slim, I'm not going to say skinny, reasonably slim, who are able to lift not just one, but multiple 50-kilo bags of cement over their heads. And it's incredibly impressive. Maybe you don't have a notion of how heavy that is. So you're just like, I guess it's impressive. And then you see these enormous bodybuilders come in and try to do the same, and they're not even able to lift one. And these guys are like 3 times the size of them, muscles rippling everywhere. It's quite impressive how little strength and how image-based it actually is, which I guess tells you something a little bit about,
and it really kind of tells you about why there's this interest to do these things. And I start the piece kind of talking about a population of people that have grown up on screens before they're they're zygote, right? Most of them, their first time on a screen is an image in a sonogram that their parents are sharing on social media.
That's a good point.
So all they know is that this is what you do, and your image is very important. And there's not that many studies, but there's a handful, and most of them are in Europe, Australia. The UK has a bit of a steroid problem. I don't know, George, if you've been seeing it at the gym.
Well, there's on my road there is a Pure Muscles gym So, I mean, and this is a kind of already quite revealing name for a gym, right? Because, is this the only thing that you want? You want pure muscles? And some of the people who go there are quite, I was going to say unusually shaped. That's not meant to be derogatory, but like very, very large shoulders, like skipping leg days, which you shouldn't do. But I guess that's part of the aesthetic. And I guess my question is kind of what drives this? Is it just straightforwardly, we're all image obsessed? This is one particularly male, but not exclusively male way to look at this, because I think is it too easy to relate it to the crisis of masculinity and young boys? 13 or 14 is quite young, looking for ways to bulk themselves out literally when maybe socially it's more difficult to do so. Or is it a bit more complicated than that? Because I guess one thing I did want to ask you about, because I'd and maybe I'm running several questions together here, but I'll just throw it in there and see what you make of it. So listeners might have heard of the Liver King. This guy who has or had claim, just by eating raw meat and doing lots of weights, he was able to achieve a rather like extremely chiseled physique. And I think he must be in his 40s or 50s. He's not like a young guy.
Same age. I think he's 47.
And he's like, so he looks like a kind of, I don't know, a cartoon of a like a very muscular caveman. And then it was later revealed, he took shitloads of steroids to do this.
Abs implanted. Those are implants.
Wow.
Did he? So because this is another thing that you bring in into the essay, is like fame is a part of it. You've got shortcuts, and that's one reason why people use steroids. But there's also the kind of not just looking, I guess, at your own image, but thinking maybe I can get thousands, tens of thousands, 100,000 people to look at my image if I say, look, you can just achieve this by just working out, no steroids, and take steroids yourself.
There's two ways, right? So I think there's two things going on. Number one, I do think there's always going to be a bit of a cash grab, because who wants to work? I think work is really looked down upon in a way that we're still trying to figure out. We're still trying to quantify how bad work is looked down upon. And I mean any kind of work, good work, right? No one wants to be an electrician because electrician's a rube. You tell someone, you're an electrician, you can make $200,000 a year. It's like, but you're still a rube. You'll never make that much as an influencer. That's the top 1%. But I don't want to be a rube, or a dork, or whatever we want to call it, a loser. And there's a language built into gym culture, and there is positivity built into gym culture. And what I mean about a language is, we have a language to speak to women. We don't necessarily have a language to speak to men. And especially young men. We know what to call them, but we don't know how to talk to them. If you go to a gym, male or female, if you go to a gym and you're having a hard time lifting something, or if you're doing your workout and you look over and someone's doing something cool, you can ask that person what they're doing and they'll explain it to you and maybe even help you. Have you ever been to a gym and you're trying to lift by yourself and someone goes, hey, I got you, I'll spot you? That's community. In real life. Online is different. Nobody's helping you. Nobody's actually patting you on the back. You're not having personal records, PRs they call them, right? You go to the gym and you walk in the door week 2. Hey, it's Alex. Hey guys, it's Alex. Now you're a guy. Maybe you don't get that at school. Maybe you don't get that at home. Maybe you don't get that at whatever fucking shit job you have. But at the gym, you have it. So there's a culture, there's a language of positivity.
And a positivity which isn't, I guess, the superficial positivity, which is very current today of like, yeah, go for it. Yeah. But I just want to return briefly just to maybe underscore a really great point you made about work, which I think is not always so transparent today, because I think there's a sense that, people are working longer hours. People have the sense of needing to be performing all the time, needing to be productive all the time. That's something that I think people are aware of, the need to hustle as well, which is related to that. And I think that's all put under the bracket of work. And it's like, but I think we need to explore how, the Protestant work ethic is really rather different to the contemporary hustle ethic, which I think is probably the best way to summarize it.
Yeah.
It's, it's not putting your head to the grindstone and just one day after the other, working your way up, saving, which is an important part of the Protestant work ethic, right? It's saving, it's anal retention.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not anal, it's consumer focused, it's speculative, it's hustle, and it's make a buck quickly. So you are meant to grind. You are meant to, the stupid thing where people put their schedules up and they're like, I wake up at 3 and do 1,000 push-ups, and then I take an ice bath, and then I whatever, et cetera, all that kind of stuff. So that looks like work in terms of just a constant routine of intensity and kind of seemingly self-denial, but not really. So there's something a little bit more complex there than just simply reading this as a continuity of like the Protestant work ethic. I think it's rather transformed. And then how does that really...
It's like it's the Protestant work ethic on steroids. No, you can delete that. Sorry, Alex, what was your actual question going to be?
Well, no, just that. So I'm trying to then, how does that relate to the bodybuilding thing? Well, I guess that's quite, or the brand of the not bodybuilding specifically, but I mean the physioculture, right? To put it, I mean, that's a word that's used in Portuguese, but I think you can probably import it into English and it works quite well. That exemplifies quite well this transformation in what work is understood to be and the centrality of work.
Yes.
Right. Work continues to be central, but really it's no longer chugging along. It's hustle, right?
You didn't wake up one day and come to all of your conclusions. You lived a life because both of you are of a certain age. Your opinions, your ideologies have changed and matured over time. George has probably 200 books behind him, and that's probably a portion of the books. I'm sure Alex has a room with maybe thousands of books behind him that he's read. And it took you years, and you're still changing, and your ideologies are still maturing. If I go to the gym and I get a pump, what that is I've lifted to failure. I've lifted to the point where my muscles are physically pumped up. They're bigger than they were. If I put a measuring tape, there's a half inch or inch difference. That's instantaneous. And I'm going to look like that in 3 months.
Well, but I read a few random pages of the Phenomenology of Spirit before every podcast I do, just to give the pump.
That's your mental pump.
That's the brain pump.
I read it backwards even sometimes. It doesn't really matter. You
can actually see the head expanding. And that's another thing. Is that a thing about steroids? It expands your head? Is that why Barry Bonds...
HGH, human growth hormone, has been known to cause certain body parts to grow, and generally your head does get larger, and sometimes you will grow a couple inches.
Okay.
So I mean, you still need to put the work in at the gym, right? So it's not that it's like it's a free pass somehow, or like a whatever, not a free pass, but like a magic beans for muscles. You have to still work at it. So work is still part of the story, but of course it supercharges it and allows you to gain muscle, which you wouldn't otherwise even be able to get, even if you were a full-time, even if you had nothing really else to do with your day than go to the gym and focus on ingesting a huge number of calories, of which a huge number have to be proteins. Even if you were just doing that, in the way that actors often have time to do if they're preparing for a role, right? They just have 6 months to just get jacked,
just do steroids,
right? And they do steroids.
They just do steroids.
But even if you were to do that, you still wouldn't reach the size and the definition of muscle and whatever that you do by taking
turn 3 years into 3 months. So think about that. One cycle you could say is probably a year. So if you do 2 cycles, let's say a couple years into 6 months. Again, back to the book analogy, you're not going to read in 6 months enough to be Dr. George. There's still a process that you have to go through. There's still learning and understanding. So I'm getting the results right away. So
you could just listen to a lot of podcasts instead.
Sadly, that mentality, that's another reason why I wrote this, because I do see that mentality, Alex. I agree with that. Even though I know your tongue is in your cheek, as well as I know, that's extremely true for a lot of people. I heard it on a podcast is the equivalent of I read it in a pamphlet, 40 years ago.
But is it then similar to AI in one sense, where you can synthesize a lot of things that you don't have to have read. You can kind of get those knowledge gains more quickly. You can compress those cycles, I guess, of learning. Because it seems I don't know, it seems different, because I guess one thing about steroids, which is different to any of the other of these kind of shortcuts, is that it goes in your body. Yes. Right? It is a transformation of your body. You have to actually inject it. And I mean, is there any of the people that you spoke to and interviewed for this, is there any kind of, I don't know, any kind of queasiness about the hypodermic aspect, that it's like, that it's actually like, I mean, it's definitely a drug. You can take some pills of something, and that's kind of a drug. If you're injecting something, there's definitely a drug.
You get high.
Like you can't really get around it. Is there any stigma, I guess, around kind of this, or I don't know?
The stigma, not really. Once you're in, you're in. I talked to a gentleman that is a musician that was a professional bodybuilder as well. And maybe you guys know him. He wasn't quoted in the piece, sadly. Eugene Robinson was in a band called Oxbow. If you're familiar, if you guys are noise rock fans.
Another name.
And he was very open about his steroid use, which he didn't start until he quit. He was a natural bodybuilder for years. And Eugene's like in his 60s and he's still jacked, steroid free. But one thing he told me that I found the most fascinating was that he goes, if they feel good, because you feel great. you just pumped your body full of testosterone. So you feel like king of the world, and there's other things you can take if your dick doesn't work. And I put that into the article as well, because I think younger people have grown up in this world of, you have a problem, there's a pill for that. There's a way to get from point A to point B way faster. And to your AI point, George, I do think there is a bit of a correlation. What we're seeing now with younger people with AI, I don't know if you guys followed the story of this young girl who got into, I think it was either Penn State or Penn, but she couldn't read. Have you followed that story at all? I didn't believe it was real. I thought it was one of those fake memes until I actually watched the CNN interview. She got an iPhone at a young age, and iPhones will read to you the text. And then she was able, when AI came out, she was able to, do things on AI, and she can't read.
Wow.
And I think that is maybe where the steroid analogy, takes place, because you have these young people that you can put in the work, so to speak. I'll use finger quotations, the work with steroids. And again, you're speeding up the process, but you're hurting yourself in the long run really badly, much like this young lady that physically can't read. She can't read street signs.
I mean, there's so many different threads that I want to pull at this, because I think it's really, I mean, your article is excellent, and it really neat and kind of hinting at these different, or rather, let me put that differently. The question of bodybuilding performance enhancing drugs is very, it's a nice way to kind of exemplify many of these other questions regarding authenticity, regarding the body, regarding drug use today, and about sociability. So I'm going to try to maybe work through some of these themes.
Hello friends, you've reached the end of a sample from an episode only available to subscribers. We put out 2 episodes a month for free. For access to the rest in its entirety, please join us at patreon.com/bungacast. For $7 a month, subscribers receive original, exclusive episodes with the entirety of the BungaCast cast. That's George Hoare, myself, Alex Hochuli, and our contributing editors, Philip Cunliffe, Amber Lee Frost, Catherine Liu, Lee Jones, Alex Gurevich, and Lee Phillips. We've got extended interviews with guests, episodes on current affairs, and original episodes on theory, history, and culture, so as to understand the crises of our times. We also have the BungaCast Reading Club, where Phil, George, and myself present the key books and essays necessary for understanding the world today, how we got here, and where we might be going. Subscribers also get a digital subscription to Damage magazine, with whom we're partnered, and you can find all this info at patreon.com/bungacast. We do hope you'll join us. These are turbulent times, and ideologically confused ones as well. What we try to do is find political clarity, to move beyond the decadent age of Bunga Bunga.
De A ou pas se taire.